Hello everyone, my name is Logan Richer, and today I will be informing you on the effects that divorce has on children. Being a child of divorced parents, I know what it feels like to listen to them constantly argue, choose who you want to live with, and pack a bag every weekend, and worry about who you're going to be with on the holidays. This time of year is actually very stressful for me. With Thanksgiving and Christmas both coming up, I've had to worry about which house I will be at for both. This is something that I've had to endure for the last 10 years. Even though I did listen to them argue when they were together, it is so much more enjoyable getting to have both my parents together in times like this week. Fighting for a marriage is worth it if you think of all the negative impacts that it will have on a child's life. My main goal today is to make the people watching aware of all the different areas and negative effects that divorce has on children. Today I will be covering 3 main points. The first point will be emotional damage. The second point I will cover will be physical damage, and the last main point I will talk about is the long-term damage that divorce can have on these kids. There are many different types of effects that divorce can leave on children. How the children handle the situation can vary, but in most cases the damage begins in the emotional aspect of the child's life. In a journal written by Paul Amato and Bruce Keith called Parental Divorce and the Well-Being of Children, a Mental Analysis, it shows research done on how more recent divorces have a bigger impact on kids rather than the ones that took place in the earlier decades. It also shows that kids from broken homes are 3 times more likely to need psychological help as they get older. My personal opinion on the emotional damage that can impact the child's life is that it is just as damaging as the physical damage that some children have to go through. The emotional aspect messes with the child's mind and thought process, and this is also where the long-term effects that we will talk about later begin. An example of the emotional impact would be a girl that is going through depression as a result of her parents' recent divorce. She seeks psychological help on a regular basis to try and keep all of these emotional effects from becoming long-term. I mentioned earlier in the speech that emotional damage has just as big of an impact as physical damage does. Although this is true, emotional damage only affects the children, whereas the physical damage can also harm people around them and is not always temporary. 6-year-old boy upset over parents' divorce commits suicide. My heart is broken on the floor is an article written by Eve Water in 2013. I located the child's obituary on the local news site and followed the link to the article written by Water. In this article, she explained what exactly happened. Him and his 7-year-old sister were watching TV in the living room, and the mother was supposedly upstairs in the bathroom. The 6-year-old boy got up and walked to the kitchen. The sister realized after a while that he had not come back and went to the kitchen to look for him. The older sister found her little brother hanging from the freezer door with a rope. Water explains in the article exactly how the police connected it to his parents' divorce. This article was very effective because the writer really thought about how the little boy felt and tried her best to interpret his side of the story. It is so saddening that a decision not even made by the child can make them want to do something so violent. But research does show that children from broken homes are twice as likely to commit suicide than children who grew up in intact homes. There are many ways that a child can physically hurt themselves. It can range anywhere from starving themselves to cutting themselves, to even something as violent as killing themselves, like the 6-year-old boy from the article. Now, if a child is experiencing emotional and or physical damage and is not receiving any help or support it takes to get through it, then it can start to affect them for the rest of their life. On May 20th, 2012, Tamara Fifi gave a speech that she titled, "The Impact of Divorce on Children." Tamara Fifi is a college professor that did a tent talk with her students about the way that students' parents communicated with them while growing up. Her main goal for this was to give children of divorce a voice. She talks about the long-term effects such as psychological difficulties, less satisfied relations with their parents, and how kids of divorce are more likely to get a divorce themselves. I can't disagree with what she is saying, considering that since I have experienced the divorced parent life, I know that sometimes you feel like nothing lasts forever, or you have self-confidence problems or sometimes feel depressed. For my example on this point, I'm going to use my mom and her situation growing up. The long-term effects that her parents' divorce had on her are very evident today. Since her parents' separation was very brutal and also had child services involved, I think that this is why her negative effects are so noticeable. She also fell underneath the research of children of divorce being more likely to get a divorce themselves. Her and my father separated when I was about 6, and 2 years later they ended up getting a divorce. Since the research is backed up by multiple cases of how divorce effects on children can linger on throughout their life, this should encourage parents to stay together to better benefit the child. I've talked to you about the different ways a parent's divorce can negatively impact the children's life. If the parents are wanting the best for their children, they need to take into consideration how the rest of this innocent child's life will turn out. If you care about your kids, you should always try your best to work things out and make things as easy and as smooth as possible for them, so they do not have to undergo the emotional, physical, or long-term damage that can come along with being a child of divorce. I hope I achieved my main purpose of this speech, which was to inform people of how powerful this one decision can be. I would like to thank everybody watching in the class, and I would also like to thank the people that took the time out of their day to be my audience. I hope you all could learn something from this presentation. Show my audience.